time is precisely 1:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Catherine Pereira and read by Ramesh Pires. First, the headlines. 5 million people have been administered the booster vaccine. The Mahasangha emphasizes that all should provide the support to face the future challenges in the country. A new force to prevent misconduct and malpractices occurring in prisons. New police officials will be recruited to the community police service. The power of the Balangura Urban Council and Horopatana Pradesh Sabha received by the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. And in news overseas, France and Germany working on Ukraine situation. And now the local news in detail. Sri Lanka stepped up its inoculation drive against severe disease of COVID-19 with the total number of individuals in the country who have received the booster dose of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine crossing the milestone of 5 million. According to State Minister Professor Chanajai Sumana, this vaccination target was reached after administering 30,253 booster doses yesterday. The Jaya pirita organized by the Defence Ministry annually was held at the BMICH under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa yesterday. This year's Jaya pirita was held with the participation of 1,000 bhikkhus invited from around the country, including Mahanayaka and Anunayaka Theras, to invoke blessings on the country and all Sri Lankans. Family members of different abled and fallen heroes also attended the event where blessings were invoked on them and the Triforces. The Mahasangha has emphasized that it is the responsibility of all to provide support for the government and the President to face future challenges. The graduation ceremony of the first batch of 194 soldiers of the Prisons Emergency Response Strategic Force, recruited as a new force for prisons in Sri Lanka, was held yesterday at the Agunakona Palace, prison grounds under the patronage of Defence Secretary, Retired General Kamal Gunaratne. Instead of recruiting new recruits from civil society as prison guards, the Prisons Emergency Response Force has been set up with those who have now legally withdrawn from the armed forces who have been directly involved in ending terrorism that plagued the country for more than 3 decades. Defence Secretary General Gunaratne said the group was set up in prison with the aim of achieving security as well as intelligence objectives while restraining and strengthening the security of the inmates to curb all possible illegal and corrupt practices as well as criminal acts that may take place inside the prisons. He said that the Prisons Emergency Response Force was established by recognizing the Prisons Intelligence Unit, creating a new revolution in the procedures of the Department of Prisons, according to the manifesto of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the policy statement of the present government, and with the objective of generating a disciplined society which follows rules and regulations as well as laws. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. We continue with more local news. The Secretary to the State Ministry of Community Police Service, SP Kodikara, said that the President has advised him to take utmost measures to safeguard the security of the community. Accordingly, measures have been taken to deploy 2 full-time officers for each Gramaniladhari division. Recruitment of police officers to the Community Police Service is being carried out at present. The pilot project of the program is being implemented in Colombo and Kandy police divisions. The power of the Balangura Urban Council, which was with the United National Party, has been received by the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. Vasanta Kumara of the Podujana Peramuna was elected as the chairman of the council by a majority of votes. In the year 2018, the authority of the council was headed by Chamika Jayamani Wimalasena of the United National Party as the chairman of the council. He has served 4 years at the council. He was defeated twice by the budget upon presenting for the 2022 year. Meanwhile, the power of the Horopatana Pradesh Sabha was also gained by the Podujana Peramuna, which was at the hands of the United National Party. The Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka is to take a decision on power interruption today after reconsidering the proposal made by the Ceylon Electricity Board. Its chairman Janaka Ratnaka said a meeting would be convened this afternoon to discuss the matter. On Tuesday, the PUCSL assured that there is no need to disrupt the electricity supply as there are sufficient fuel stocks to generate power for 3 days. Accordingly, the CEB's proposal on power cuts will be reconsidered today while taking into account the electricity demand, existing fuel supplies and the amount of electricity that can be generated. China has expressed their willingness to provide earthquake monitoring centers to Sri Lanka free of charge. Accordingly, Minister Mahinda Amaraveera said that 7 earthquake monitoring centers will be installed in the country in the future. 4 such centers are already been set up in the country. These centers have been established in Pallekele, Buddangala, Mahakandarava and Hakmana areas. One center is to be set up at the boundary of the Western and Northwestern province. The minister made these remarks participating at a workshop held in Kandy recently. And that concludes the bulletin of local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
A committee has been appointed with the participation of the regional governors under the chairmanship of the Health Minister, considering the risk of spreading dengue menace in the country. Working Director of the National Dengue Eradication Unit, Dr. Sudat Samaraveera, said that the breeding of dengue mosquitoes at the vicinity of homes, schools and construction premises has increased, and authorities of institutions and residents should pay more attention in this regard. He made these remarks participating in a media briefing held in Colombo today. Meanwhile, the Deputy Director General of Health Services, Specialist Dr. Mahinda Arnold, said that the support of all is needed to eradicate the dengue menace. He stressed that present reporting of dengue patients has increased considerably. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
In Watchlight, the people are facing many difficulties to carry out their day-to-day transportational activities due to halfway halting of carpeting activities of the road from Wilbakethara Junction to Dunupotha Ratpura at the Pandwasnuwara Eastern Divisional Secretariat Division. The Asian Development Bank has provided 61 million rupees under the joint investment program to develop the road. The people in the area are requesting the relevant authorities to renovate the road as soon as possible. And that came to you in Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Moving on to the bulletin of world news, first the headlines. France and Germany working on Ukraine situation. US rejects Russian demand to bar Ukraine from NATO. North Korea fired 2 projectiles off the east coast. Now the world news in detail. Germany and France are working together to ease tensions over Ukraine. Senior diplomats from the 2 countries met with delegates representing Russia and Ukraine in Paris yesterday. After the talks, chief Russian negotiator Dmitry Kozak said the 4 parties agreed to continue with talks aimed at easing tensions. France's presidential office said in a statement that the next talks will be held in 2 weeks in Germany. The statement also said the 4 envoys were united on observing the 2015 ceasefire agreement in eastern Ukraine. Sporadic fighting has continued in the region between government forces and armed pro-Russian forces even after the ceasefire. The US has rejected Russia's demand to bar Ukraine from NATO amid warnings Russia might invade its neighbor. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was giving Russia a formal response to its demands to resolve the Ukraine crisis. Mr. Blinken gave no concessions, but said that he was offering Russia a serious diplomatic path forward should Russia choose it. A Russian minister said his country would study Mr. Blinken's response delivered in coordination with NATO. Russia had issued a written list of its concerns about the expansion of the NATO military alliance and related security issues. The South Korean military says North Korea has fired 2 projectiles believed to be short-range ballistic missiles towards the sea of its east coast. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff made the announcement this morning. It is working with US forces to gather and analyze information about the launch. North Korea has repeatedly launched missiles since the beginning of this year. It fired 1 projectile each on January 5th and 11th and announced the next day that it had tested a hypersonic missile. It also fired 2 projectiles each on January 14th and 17th. They are believed to have been short-range ballistic missiles. Back to the headlines of the world news. France and Germany working on Ukraine situation. US rejects Russian demand to bar Ukraine from NATO. North Korea fired 2 projectiles off the east coast. And that concludes the bulletin of world news.
Development News is brought to you by Let's take all out of the coconut tree and make the island thriving and prosperous. Call our hotline 1928. WhatsApp 070 400 1928.
The former general manager of the Putlam cement factory, engineer Ananda Karunaratne, says that the cement requirement in the country can be fulfilled by the Putlam and Kankasanture cement factories. Therefore, the operational activities of Kankasanture cement factory should be normalized soon. He pointed out that the current cement crisis in the country could be solved through restructuring of the factory. And that was Development News.
Development News was brought to you by the coconut tree is well grown in almost all the parts of the island. It is an exceptional source of extra income. The shell, the husk and almost all the parts of the coconut tree makes you money, providing you with an excellent extra source of income. It will also help to nourish the economy of the country. You will be guided with all necessary informations regarding the coconut cultivation, with the novel cultivation techniques and all other related and upgraded informations by the Coconut Research Institute, Lunavilla. Call our hotline 1928. WhatsApp 070 400 1928.
In sports, it's cricket. Opener Danushka Gunatilaka has been recalled to the Sri Lankan 20-member squad for the Australian 5-match T20 series, which is scheduled to commence on February 11th. The selection committee has named a 20-member squad, while they have already appointed promising all-rounder Charit Asalanka as deputy skipper of the team. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka women's cricket team, who qualified for the Commonwealth Women's Cricket Tournament, had arrived in the island this morning. The qualified matches were held in Malaysia. The Sri Lankan team was headed by Chamari Atapattu. And that was sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Dutch Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Tanya Godgrip, acknowledged that due to the global reserve scenario, it fell upon the Europeans to pay more and impose additional regulations to make trade more sustainable and beneficial for both parties. Godgrip identified Sri Lanka as a forerunner for the increase in organic and other sustainability-based trade sourcing relationships. She said that creating new connections and supporting sustainable trade and investment between the Netherlands and Sri Lanka was part of the celebrations of 70 years of diplomatic relations between the two countries. And that was Business News.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Red onion cultivation has been expanded in 40 villages in Ruhunu Magampura for the Yala season. The project is being carried out under the guidance of Hambantota District Office of the Interprovincial Agriculture Department. The necessary seeds and advice for the cultivation will be given freely. Plans have been made to conduct cultivation activities with the use of organic fertilizer. And that was Economic News. The weather report is next.
The Weather Report.
And finally, on to the weather report. The Met Department says that except for a few showers in the Sabaragamu province and in the Kalutara district, mainly fair weather will prevail over the island. And that was the weather report. And to end this news broadcast, a recap of the main news headlines. 5 million people have been administered the booster vaccine. The Mahasangha emphasizes that all should provide their support to face the future challenges in the country. A new force to prevent misconduct and malpractices occurring in prisons. New police officials will be recruited to the community police service. The power of the Balangura Urban Council and Horo Patana Pradeshya Sabha received by the Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramura. And in news overseas, France and Germany working on Ukraine situation. And that concludes this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.